Okay, ladies and gentlemen, assignment number 12 for Dracula. As you have now realized, this is basically all action from this point of the story until the end. Whether or not they're going to stop Dracula, we're going to find that out. But basically, the men and Mina are on the hunt for Dracula, and the rest of this book is going to be how and if they're able to find him and destroy him. So let's pick it up from where we left off. I am on the bottom of page 346, and this is Mina talking, and then we'll go into assignment number 12. I own that my own heart began to fail me when the time for action came so close, but I did not say anything, for I had a greater fear that if I appeared as a drag or a hindrance to their work, they might even leave me out of their counsels altogether. They have now gone off to Carfax, which means to get into the house. So at this point, the men are all going into the different houses that Dracula's in to try to find him or some clue as to where he is. Man-like, they had told me to go to bed and sleep, as if a woman can sleep when those she loves are in danger. I shall lie down and pretend to sleep, lest Jonathan have added anxiety about me when he returns. Okay, Dr. Sword's diary, 1 October, 4 a.m. This is on page 347. Just as we were about to leave the house, an urgent message was brought to me from Renfield to know if I would see him at once, as he had something of the utmost importance to say to me. I told the messenger to say that I would attend his wishes in the morning. I was busy just at the moment. See, I don't think that Dr. Sword, John, realizes, or actually Jack is what they call him as his nickname, that Jack realizes that Renfield is connected to all of this. He doesn't get that yet. The attendant added, he seems very importunate, sir. I have never seen him so eager. I don't know what if you don't see him soon, he will have one of his violent fits. I knew the man would not have said this without some cause, so I said, all right, I'll go now. And I asked the others to wait a few minutes for me, as I had to go and see my patient. Take me with you, friend John, said the professor. His case in your diary interests me much, and it had bearing, too, now and again on our case. See, the professor knows, though. He's read the diaries, and he's like, dude, there's some kind of connection with Renfield and the Count. I should much like to see him, and especially when his mind is disturbed. May I come also? Asked Lord Godalming. Me too, said Quincy Morris. May I come, said Harker. I nodded, and we all went down the passage together. So now they're all going to see Renfield. You have Arthur, you have Quincy, you have Jonathan now in the mix, you have the doctor, and you have Van Helsing, all five of them. We found him in a state of considerable excitement, but far more rational in his speech and manner than I had ever seen him. There was unusual understanding of himself, which was unlike anything I had ever met with in a lunatic. And he took it for granted that his reasons would prevail with others entirely sane. Am I correct? Yeah, we all five of them. We all five went into the room, but none of the others at first said anything. His request was that I would at once release him from the asylum and send him home. This he backed up with arguments regarding his complete recovery and adduced his own existing sanity. So this is interesting. Why now, when everything is seeming to happen with the vampire hunters and Lucy and Dracula, why now does Renfield want out? I appeal to your friends, he said. They will perhaps not mind sitting in my judgment on my case. By the way, you have not introduced me. I was so much astonished that the oddness of introducing a madman in an asylum did not strike me at the moment. And besides, there was a certain dignity in the man's manner, so much of the habit of equality that I at once made the introductions. Lord Godalming, Professor Van Helsing, Mr. Quincy Morris of Texas, Mr. Jonathan Harker, Mr. Renfield. He shook hands with each of them, saying in toward Lord Godalming, I had the honor of seconding your father at the Wyndham. I grieve to know, by your holding the title, that he is no more. He was a man loved and honored by all who knew him, and in his youth was, I have heard, the inventor of a burnt rum punch, much patronized on Derby night. Mr. Moore, see, this always surprises me, the fact that Renfield, yeah, he's a crazy dude, but clearly, before he was in the nut house, he was a man of high society. He knew Lord Godalming's father. Listen, he knows Mr. Morris. You should be proud of your great state. Its reception into the Union was a precedent which may have far-reaching effects hereafter, when the pole and the tropics may hold alliance to the stars and stripes. The power of treaty may yet prove a vast engine of enlargement, when the Monroe Doctrine takes its true place as a political fable. What shall any man say of his pleasure at meeting Van Helsing? Sir, I make no apology for dropping all forms of conventional prefix. When an individual has revolutionized therapeutics by his discovery of the continuous evolution of brain matter, conventional forms are unfitting, since they would seem to limit him to one of a class. All right, I'm learning something about Renfield now by how much he knows about these guys. I mean, he knows everything about Van Helsing as well, and what he studies, and what he's done, and what he's perfected. So that tells me that Renfield, while he might have a problem with his brain, he's no knucklehead. He's pretty darn smart. You gentlemen who by nationality, by heredity, or by the possession of natural gifts are fitted to hold your respective places in the moving world, I take to witness that I am as sane as at least the majority of men who are in full possession of their liberties. And I am sure that you, Dr. Sword, humanitarian and medico-jurist as well as scientist, will deem it a moral duty to deal with me as one to be considered as under exceptional circumstances. He made this last appeal with a courtly air of conviction, which was not without its own charm. So what I think is happening right now is Renfield is trying to act so normal so that the doctor will let him out. And he's looking at all these other men and saying, can you guys help me? You can tell I'm a normal dude, right? I'm not less crazy. I'm not as crazy as many people out there. I think we were all staggered. For my own part, I was under the conviction, despite my knowledge of the man's character and history, that his reason had been restored. And I felt under a strong impulse to tell him that I was satisfied as to his sanity and would see about the necessary formalities for his release in the morning. I thought it better to wait, however, before making so grave a statement, for of old I knew the sudden changes to which the particular patient was liable. So I contented myself with making a general statement that he appeared to be improving very rapidly, that I would have a longer chat with him in the morning and would then see what I could do in the direction of meeting his wishes. Okay, so Dr. Sword just said, you know what? He actually did seem kind of normal. And I was thinking about maybe letting him go, but today wasn't the day for it. I wanted to make sure that tomorrow he wasn't back to being crazy. So the next day we'll take a look at it. But here's the problem. It appears that Renfield wants out today. I think he thinks something is going to happen tonight. This did not at all satisfy him, for he said quickly, but I fear, Dr. Sword, that you hardly apprehend my wish. I desire to go at once, here, now, this very hour, this very moment, if I may. Time presses. In our implied agreement with the old side man, it is of the essence of the contract. He just said time presses, and in our implied agreement with the old side man, what's the old side man? That's death. So I think he's saying, if you don't let me out of here today, I'm going to die tonight. Does he think Dracula is going to come and kill him tonight? I'm sure it is only necessary to put before so admirable a practitioner as Dr. Sword so simple, yet so momentous a wish to ensure its fulfillment. He looked at me keenly, and seeing the negative in my face, turned to the others and scrutinized them closely. Not meeting any sufficient response, he went on. Is it possible that I've erred in my supposition? You have, I said frankly, but at the same time as I felt brutally. There was a considerable pause, and then he said slowly, then I suppose I must only shift my ground of request. Let me ask for this concession, boon, privilege, what you will. I am content to implore in such a case, not on personal grounds, but for the sake of others. I am not at liberty to give you the whole of my reasons, but you may, I assure you, take it from me that they are good ones, sound and unselfish, and spring from the highest sense of duty. So I think he just said now, okay, then let me give you another reason. Other people are in danger. You need to let me out of here now so that I can keep other people safe. Would you look, sir, into my heart? You would approve to the full sentiments which animate me. Nay, more, you would count me amongst the best and truest of your friends. Again, he looked at us all keenly. I had a growing conviction that this sudden change of his entire intellectual method was but yet another phase of his madness, and so determined to let him go on a little longer, knowing from experience that he would, like all lunatics, give himself away in the end. Van Helsing was gazing at him with a look of utmost intensity, his bushy eyebrows almost meeting with the fixed concentration of his look. He said to Renfield in a tone which did not surprise me at the time, but only when I thought of it afterwards, for it was of one addressing an equal. Can you not tell frankly your real reason for wishing to be free tonight? I will undertake that if you will satisfy me, a stranger, without prejudice, and with the habit of keeping an open mind, Dr. Seward will give you at his own risk and on his own responsibility the privilege you seek. So I think Van Helsing now realizes there is a connection between Renfield and Dracula, because Renfield is begging, it's got to be tonight. I'm afraid I'm going to die. I'm afraid other people are going to get hurt. So now, and he said, but I can't tell you the reason. So Van Helsing said, listen, dude, tell us the truth. We will listen and maybe it will help you. He shook his head sadly and with a look of poignant regret on his face. The professor went on, come, sir, bethink yourself. You claim the privilege of reason in the highest degree, since you seek to impress us with your complete reasonableness. You do this, whose sanity we have reason to doubt, since you are not yet released from medical treatment for this very defect. If you will not help us in our effort to choose the wisest course, how can we perform the duty which you yourself put upon us? Be wise and help us. And if we can, we shall aid you to achieve your wish. In other words, dude, tell us the truth. He still shook his head as he said, Dr. Van Helsing, I have nothing to say. Your argument is complete, and if I were free to speak, I should not hesitate a moment, but I am not my own master in the matter. I can only ask you to trust me. If I am refused, the responsibility does not rest with me. He says, I am not allowed to tell you. And he says, if you refuse me, it will be your fault, that bad things happen tonight. I thought it was now time to end the scene, which was becoming too comically grave. So I went to the door, simply saying, "Come, my friend, we have work to do. Good night." As, however, I got near the door, a new change came over the patient. He moved towards me so quickly that for the moment I feared that he was about to make another homicidal attack. Fears, however, were groundless, for he held up his two hands imploringly and made his petition in a moving manner. So now he's begging. As he saw that the very excess of his emotion was militating against him, by restoring us more to our old relations, he became still more demonstrative. I glanced at Van Helsing and saw more conviction reflected in his eyes, so I became a little more fixed in my manner, if not more stern, and motioned to him that his efforts were unavailing. I had previously seen something of the same constantly growing excitement in him when he had to make some request of which at the time he had thought much, such, for instance, as when he wanted a cat, and I was prepared to see the collapse into the same sullen acquiescence on this occasion. So he says, listen, in his thoughts, he's like, dude, I've worked with this crazy guy before. I don't believe him. I think he is crazy, and I think he's going to show us any minute. Van Helsing, on the other hand, he thinks something different. My expectation was not realized, for when he found that his appeal would not be successful, he got into quite a frantic condition. Can I just point out one piece of irony? Dr. Seward works in a crazy house, right? In an asylum for lunatics. If Dr. Seward went out and told people what he knows about Dracula and Lucy and the vampires and the drinking of blood, where would he be put? Into a crazy asylum. They would put him into his own lunatic asylum. They would say he was crazy and mad. So I don't think that the doctor is realizing and making the connection that, hey, wait a minute, maybe Renfield isn't crazy. Maybe he's dealing with the same unbelievable madness that I'm dealing with. But I think Van Helsing does get it. But we'll see what happens. My expectation was not realized. All right, we did that. Let me entreat you, Dr. Oh, no, did I finish that? He threw himself on his knees. I'm going to read it again. I think I did. And held up his hands, wringing them in plaintive supplication, and poured forth a torrent of entreaty with the tears rolling down his cheeks, and his whole face and form expresses of the deepest emotion. So he certainly seemed like he's for real. Let me entreat you, Dr. Seward. Oh, let me implore you to let me out of this house at once. Send me away how you will and where you will. Send keepers with me with whips and chains. Let them take me in a straight waistcoat, manacled and leg iron, even to gold. But let me get out of this. You don't know what you do by keeping me here. So this is interesting. He said, I don't care where you take me. You can chain me up into a dungeon somewhere. Have people stay with me all the time. I'm not going to run. I believe that Renfield believes that he's going to die tonight, that Dracula's coming for him. And ask yourself this. Yeah, he's in a lunatic asylum behind bars, behind walls and doors and locks. But could Dracula get in and hurt him if he wanted to? Absolutely. He could come in on moonlight. We know that. I'm speaking from the depths of my heart and my very soul. You don't know whom you wrong or how, and I may not tell. Woe is me, I may not tell. So here's the question. Why can't he tell what's happening? That's just the weirdest part. By all you hold sacred, by all you hold dear, by your love that is lost, by your hope that lives, for the sake of the Almighty, take me out of this and save my soul from guilt. Can't you hear me, man? Can't you understand? Will you never learn? Don't you know that I am sane and earnest now, that I'm no lunatic in a mad fit, but a sane man fighting for his soul? Oh, hear me, let me go, let me go, let me go. I thought that the longer this went on, the wilder he would get, and so would bring on a fit. So I took him by the hand and raised him up. Come, I said sternly, no more of this. We have had quite enough already. Get to your bed and try to behave more discreetly. He suddenly stopped and looked at me intently for several moments. Then without a word, he rose and moving over, sat down on the side of the bed. The collapse had come, as on former occasions, just as I had expected. When I was leaving the room, last of our party, he said to me in a quiet, well-bred voice, you will, I trust, Dr. Seward, do me the justice to bear in mind later on that I did what I could to convince you tonight. Oh, snap. Basically, he said, please remember that I begged you to let me out of here. So it will be your fault when something bad happens. Now I ask you, he said that after I said no to him, that he was going to go on to the bed and collapse in a fit. Does this sound like a man who's collapsing in a fit? He didn't go over there and freak out, scream, try to attack them or go after them. No, he said, okay, but remember I warned you. That does not sound like an insane person to me, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go, chapter 19. I wonder if this book would have ended differently if they had let Renfield out. I don't know, but since you don't know how the book ends yet, let's wait and see. Jonathan Harker's journal, 1 October, 5 a.m. I went with the party to the search with an easy mind, for I think I never saw Mina so absolutely strong and well. I am so glad that she consented to hold back and let us men do the work. Somehow, it was a dread to me that she was in this fearful business at all. But now that her work is done, see, it's so funny. She shouldn't be involved in this. I'm so sad that without her, they wouldn't have all this knowledge together. She's the one that sewed it all together, typed the notes and had them all talk about it and everything. She's the one who did her internet research, her newspaper research as well. It's just so funny that they think, oh, she just can't handle any of this, please. Somehow it was a dread to me that she was in this fearful business at all, but now that her work is done and that it is her due to her energy and brains and foresight, that the whole story is put together in such a way that every point tells, she may well feel that her part is finished and that she can henceforth leave the rest to us. OMG, he just pointed out it's because of her that we know as much. But she's done. She's going to get out of here. Dude, you might need her more. She's clearly smarter than you. I'm sorry, I get angry every time they try to make her less than a person because she's a woman. It makes me mad, ladies and gentlemen. Women are just as tough and strong and smart and awesome as men can be. Can be, not are. It depends on the person. Don't ever think differently than that. Makes me mad. Let's continue. We were, I think, all a little upset by the scene with Mr. Renfield. When we came away from his room, we were silent till we got back to the study. Then Mr. Morris said to Dr. Stewart, "Say, Jack, if that man wasn't attempting a bluff, he is about the sanest lunatic I ever saw. I'm not sure, but I believe that he had some serious purpose. And if he had, it was pretty rough on him not to get a chance." Even Quincy Morris looks at the doctor and was like, "Dude, he convinced me. I think you should have let him out." Lord Godalming and I were silent, but Dr. Van Helsing added, "Friend John, you know more lunatics than I do, and I'm glad of it, for I fear that if it had been to me to decide, I would, before that last hysterical outburst, have given him free. But we live and learn, and in our present task, we must take no chance, as my friend Quincy would say. All is best as they are." Dr. Sword seemed to answer them both in a dreamy kind of way. "I don't know but that I agree with you. If that man had been an ordinary lunatic, I would have taken my chance of trusting him, but he seems so mixed up with the Count in an indexy kind of way that I'm afraid of doing anything wrong by helping his fads. I can't forget how he prayed with almost equal fervor for a cat and then tried to tear my throat out with his teeth. Besides, he called the Count Lord and Master, and he may want to get out to help him in some diabolical way. That horrid thought has the wolves and the rats in his own kind to help him, so I suppose he isn't above trying to use a respectable lunatic. He certainly did seem earnest, though. I only hope we have done what is best. These things, in conjunction with the wild work we have at hand, help to unnerve a man." See, you know what? I got to give Dr. Sword a little bit of credit. He just explained himself completely. Now, first of all, Quincy was like, "Dude, you should have let him out." But then Van Helsing was like, "You know what? I would have let him out, but then again, I'm not an expert on lunatics the way you are. You work in a madhouse. You work with this guy, so you know him better than me." And then Dr. Sword says, "You know what? I almost let him out as well, but there's things about him which still kind of scare me. For one, he has said before that the Count was his Lord and Master. So if I let him out, does he go and help the Count in some way?" Now, I don't know if we've talked about this in this class yet, but remember, some vampire legends have it that some vampires use humans, and they're called familiars, and they use them as their errand boys and girls, as their assistants, right? So you would have a familiar that would be able to defend your coffin during the day in case anybody comes and tries to stake you. Your familiar would defend you, right? Also, they would be able to do things for you during the day that you couldn't get done. I mean, think about what life would be like if you could never go out in the sun. Some days you may have to go out and take care of something. Well, your familiar would go and do that for you. And the promise that most vampires in most legends, because remember, vampire legends are interchanging and any one could be different than any other, but most vampire legends will tell you that the promise that the vampire gives the familiar is, "Hey, buddy, if you do my work for me for 10 or 20 or 30 years, at the end of it, I will turn you into a vampire and then you can live forever. And then I will get a new familiar." So what Dr. Sword is saying here is, you know what? Maybe he was just trying to use him as his familiar, as like an assistant. So we shouldn't let him out because I don't want him to help the Count because the Count is out there killing people. The professor stepped over and laying his hand on his shoulder and said in a grave, kindly way, "Friend John, have no fear. We are trying to do our duty in a very sad and terrible case. We can only do as we deem best. What else have we to hope for except the pity of the good God? Lord Godalming had slipped away for a few minutes, but now he returned. He held up a little silver whistle as he remarked, "That old place may be full of rats, and if so, I've got an antidote on call." Having passed the wall, we took our way to the house. By the way, I just love the fact that he brings that silver whistle and he says, in case it's filled with rats. And remember, vampires can control rats. So they go into the house that they're breaking into and there's like 1,000 rats. Well, maybe those 1,000 rats attack them. At the very least, they could give you rabies or, chew an eye or two out. So that would be very awful. But Lord Godalming, Arthur says, I'm bringing this whistle and I've got a backup plan for those rats. I love that part. Wait until you see his backup plan. It's pretty awesome. Having passed the wall, we took our way to the house, taking care to keep in the shadows of the trees on the lawn when the moonlight shone out. When we got to the porch, the professor opened his bag and took out a lot of things, which he laid on the steps, sorting them into 4 little groups, evidently one for each. Then he spoke. Perfect place to stop. I stopped on the top of page 356, and this is when Van Helsing is going to be handing everybody their supplies for this journey. And he says, this is the sentence you'll pick it up from on top of page 356 of the online version. My friends, we are going into a terrible danger, and we need arms of many kinds. And that is where you will pick it up today. This is assignment number 12, so you will be finishing at page 383 of the online version, or of course, if you're reading a different version or listening to it or anything, that you will just stop after you have finished answering all the questions for assignment number 12. Fabulous job, everybody, today. Thank you very much for your time and patience. Have a nice day.